Thanks, Nacho, for letting me in.
Oh, you're welcome, man. That's worth at least one beer. Allison still has to pay up. And anyway,
Do we have quorum yet at this point?
I I can't tell, Jay. I'm letting people in.
Okay.
I think I have one, two, three, four. Do I count just four commissioners?
Let's see.
Jay, Lori, Mark,
So far.
Kenny. Maggie's coming in.
Tisha.
Tisha, sorry. And I was talking to her.
Lori's here. Lori Miserva.
Yep. So we should have five, six. One more.
Maggie Yamato Tejas and Marcos.
Present. Maggie's here.
Yeah.
Sorry I'm late.
That's all right. Haven't started. What do you count? How many do you count, Jay?
Let's see.
6, 7?
5, 6, 7. 7 with Marcos.
Marco's a non-voting ex officio.
6. I think. Me, Maggie, Mark, Kenny, Lori,
Tisha.
Tisha. That's 7. I guess it's 6. This may be the hardest part of the meeting for me. Hopefully it's the hardest part. We'll see.
Here we go. Mindy's coming.
Okay, great. We need 7, right?
Correct.
Great. Okay, so I think with Mindy, we have quorum. So with that, I will call the meeting to order. Jim is out of town this week, so I will be leading the meeting. And I would like to read the statement before we get started, or as we get started. The Commission on Equitable Housing and Development meeting has now commenced. It is March 7th at 4 p.m. This meeting is being held virtually due to COVID-19 to allow for social distancing and protect the public health. As we continue our efforts in meeting remotely, we ask all commissioners and guests to mute yourselves until called upon to speak to avoid feedback and background noise. For those who have dialed in using the call-in number, to unmute to speak, dial *6 on your phone. Also, prior to speaking, please announce who you are to identify yourself. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. Also, in order to comply with the state open meeting law, attendance and votes will be done by way of roll call using audio, not by using the chat function. With that, I will do the roll call. Voting members, Maggie Amato Tejas.
Present.
Wendy Asher. I don't think she is here. Mary Ann Bierling, I think she's also absent. Mindy Bernstein.
Present.
Mark Clark.
Present.
Vicky Cusino. Lori Miserbo.
Present.
Tisha Tallman.
Here.
Jim Toffel, absent. Ray Winch? Absent. Kenny Wong?
Present.
And Jay Young, I am here. So just one last time, we do have quorum, correct? That's 7.
Yes.
Next, we would like to approve the meeting minutes from are we just doing the previous meeting, or do we have others to approve as well?
Just the previous meeting.
Just the previous, and those meeting minutes are attached to the agenda if you have those in front of you. Are there any changes that need to be made? Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes from last meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I
I'll
second.
second.
Okay, we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the ayes have it. Meeting minutes are approved. Moving along, call to the audience. This is the time when any member of the public may address the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development. Due to time constraints, the total time allotted for this is 10 minutes. Individuals are allowed 3 minutes each. Due to open meeting law, Commission members cannot discuss topics that are not on the agenda. Items brought up by the public may be considered as an agenda item for a future meeting. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak?
There are 2 members in the audience and no hands up yet. Ben Bueller Garcia and Francis Salcido.
Again, anyone in the audience that would like to speak? Okay, hearing none, I will continue down the agenda. Next, we have a recap of the February 2nd retreat and next steps. And as you can see on the agenda, the purpose is to clarify CEHD goals and operations over the next year. And the overview of and takeaways from the retreat will be led by Tanya and Colleen. So with that, take it away.
Thanks, and good to see you all. Okay, so do I have screen sharing, or can you give me screen sharing ability?
Bear with me for a moment. Oh, what happened? Where'd you go? Okay, Tani.
Thanks. Okay, you're seeing my screen that says actions and decisions?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so here they are. The actions and decisions from that you guys came up with at the end. We'll review those and then we'll just kind of scroll through here with the big areas of next steps that you identified, just so that it's all clear. And if you need to discuss how you're going to address those, not address them right now, but how you're going to, when and how you're going to address those to make sure that that's clear. And then, so we have the motion to acquire permanent facilitation for the commission and with funding by the city was all were in favor, none opposed. And I believe you all, after we leave, can talk about that and discuss who you want to be your facilitators. The second one is us creating a survey for in-person meetings, daytime preferences. And instead, we wanted to discuss that with you tonight. I believe, correct, Jay? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get back to that. The mission and the goals and next steps. So the mission, the full commission review and finalizing the edits, then sending to mayor and council for approval. And we'll scroll down to that in a second. And then the goals and next steps. And there was specific actions for each one. So those were the main categories of actions and decisions that we captured. So scrolling through, sorry, if you you can close your eyes if you need to. We have, mission and goals. So several of you or a few of you have gone into the notes and made comments and asked questions, et cetera, which is great. Basically, with the mission, we have highlighted in red the elements you wanted to add, and some discussion. Affordable housing, again, the things that you wanted to add are in red. Housing desegregation, or potentially renamed equitable housing strategies. You had a lot of new goals entirely. Housing first, again. And then this table is especially relevant. So this is where each of these items, mission and each goal area and its associated committee, is noted on the left, and on the right are the next steps that you all identified. So this is like your one table about what you said you would do next. So maybe we can just review that now, and you can say if that's the plan still. So with the mission, the full commission finalizing the desired changes to the language and then sending to mayor and council for approval. So Jay and others, how is it that you want to come to agreement about final desired language?
What I don't remember where we landed at the meeting at the retreat.
Here, I'll go back up to that section really quick. So you have some, like, remove this phrase and add this other phrase. And then, I mean, here's your proposed edits. And it seems like there was agreement on this, but do you want to discuss now if this is what you all agree to, if there's any concerns, or identify how you want to come to making sure this is your agreed upon revised mission so that you have it and can then send it onward?
And sorry, Tani, just to jump in to note that the text in red was developed at the retreat as additional language, and as well as the strike throughs. The stuff that's showing up in purple that you can see was added by Ray, was added after the fact, after the retreat.
Discussed, right.
Mm-hmm. So those you wouldn't have seen those, when we were working at the retreat. So that's new material for consideration.
I guess I would open that up to the commission. Do we want to work on this now during this meeting, or do we want to set aside, time at the next meeting? I guess I'm open. It seems like we're doing pretty good on time at the moment, so we could think about doing it now. But I don't know. What does the group think?
Mindy? Oh.
Good, Mindy.
Yep, thank you. I am still working on getting my printer working. And for somehow my brain I need to see things on paper. I don't absorb well on computer. So I would ask that selfishly, either we go very slowly on these changes, or we put it, table it and continue with our, have more time for people to look at it, read it, and continue on with our agenda.
Thanks, Mindy. Ann?
So my one recommendation, I'm thinking about open meeting law here and ensuring we're not violating open meeting law. So a couple recommendations to avoid that moving forward. We can talk about it during a full meeting. People can review it individually and send updates and comments, or you can talk about it in your subcommittees. One thing that we can't do is kind of collaboratively be working on it together outside of meetings.
So it seems like you need to take time, like Ray did, but each of you take time to look through this and consider it. And then one proposal, like just to build off what you said, Ann, if you're going to each meet in your subcommittees, which Colleen and I weren't clear if you've already done that or you haven't done that, to talk about your own goal language that we're going to get to in a second. If you haven't yet done that, you could do your goal language and discuss the mission, and then come back together. We could consolidate the comments so that they're a little bit easier to digest, and then that could maybe go back out to everybody and you could have it on your next agenda as an actual discussion.
That could work. Also, we did meet as a subcommittee, the Equitable Housing Strategies, formerly the Housing Desegregation Subcommittee, and we did actually talk about this in some detail. So we, at least the folks that joined us then, have had some input that we can share with the group as well. So that might be a good way, as each of the subcommittees get back together and digest the things that came out of the retreat, for each subcommittee also talk about the mission.
Okay, well, let's continue on and we can circle back to this, but it seems like we're not going to talk about it right now. And come to. Okay, so the next one, so now each one of these has your additions. The purple, like Colleen mentioned, would be whoever, Ray or whoever else added, but not just purple, but any color. For example, Kenny is brown and Ray is purple and Jay is turquoise. So if you each take time, that's what each of these subcommittees is. So let's just look now at the subcommittees. So you're each reviewing in your own subcommittee. How many subcommittees have met? You said yours, Jay, have all of.
I'm not sure if the others have met. I don't think they have, but I'm not sure. Have any of the other subcommittees met?
Since the retreat?
Yes,
Tisha,
the Housing First Subcommittee met.
Has or has not?
And I just put the notes in there from the meeting as we were talking.
And did you work on this as you in your meeting?
Yes.
Okay. And the others?
Housing has not met.
So 2 of the 3 have met.
And Tisha, how many folks are in your subcommittee that weren't in the Housing Desegregation Subcommittee that met? I'm just wondering how many folks have not had some opportunity to review.
Yeah, none of the, there's no overlap with your subcommittee.
So how many people did you have in yours when you met?
3 plus me.
So like 7 or 8 of us have reviewed this in our subcommittees then, more or less.
Okay. And housing, you are going to be meeting between now and your next meeting in the next month.
well, Jim's not here, so I don't know if he's the
Oh,
one
right.
who would say that.
Okay. How long is he just temporarily gone? Not.
I think he's just gone this week.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, and then you had some other items like coordinating with the County Housing Commission, discussing the housing discuss the housing fund and housing trust fund and housing bond, get current count of units, some of these other items. How are you for affordable housing? Have you done your additional tasks?
Well, that's the one that hasn't met, so
Oh,
probably
that's
not.
the one that hasn't. I'm sorry. For the other 2.
So what was the question again? I'm sorry.
If you've done other tasks, like meet with Office of Equity, you've met as a group and you've talked about these goals, but have you also done some of these other items?
Let's see. We have not met with the Office of Equity, but they come to our subcommittee regularly. I'm definitely going to be reaching out again just to reestablish that relationship. Let's see. Get the relevant info from PDSD. We are going to be working on that going forward. As will we be researching cities? The next bullet up. We're discussing about the field trips. We did work on the goal language, and I think got pretty far, if not finished there. So all of these are either we have done them or are in motion.
And on the Housing First Committee, we completed the first task, and the third task we haven't met yet with the TPCH leadership.
Okay. And Alice, yeah, okay.
So I managed to meet with Clarice this month just to kind of follow up on the discussion last month, and I think she is interested and available to participate. I think either in the subcommittee or in the commission meeting. I think you heard their staff is pretty small at the moment, but I think Jay, you and I had talked about, you know, maybe having that like housing equity definitions and metrics conversation in the subcommittee, and so to me it feels like that's where I think we want to formalize her attending those. I think the timing will be better too, just for pickup purposes too. So if you're comfortable with moving that forward, Neto and I can make sure that she's attending those meetings moving forward.
Yeah, I think that works. I remember talking about that, so that sounds good.
Okay, so the pending tasks, reviewing the mission language, bringing it back to everyone so that you can all look at all the proposed language. Would you want to be working on having the next meeting be your goal for getting those things done, so then you can discuss it at your next meeting?
So I'm a little bit confused. I mean, I know obviously the subcommittees are looking at the overall CEHD mission, and then, you know, the notes have gone out and everybody has had the opportunity and will continue to have the opportunity to make any suggestions or edits. But I'm a little bit confused then. It sounds like we can't or are not going to work through it at all as during our commission meetings. So how do we?
No, I think you can't work on it out of your commission meeting.
Oh, out of our, so what we should do then, I guess, is have probably some time allotted at the next commission meeting to make any kind of final discussion and final edits to the mission. Is that accurate? Does that sound right to everyone?
Yeah, does that sound right? Colleen and I are not available at your next commission meeting time, but you guys can work through it probably just fine, as long as you have it's cleaned up and this is like final language that you're proposing that everybody, which we could help with in the kind of that part.
Does that sound good to the rest of the commission? Go ahead, Mindy.
I would be leery to say that by next month we will get it all completed and finalized. I think we might want a little bit of grace time. In case we run out of time. But
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt. Kenny, go ahead.
Thanks. I thought it was really helpful, the discussion we had within the subcommittee. So, you know, I know that the affordable housing one wasn't able to meet, but just having that chance to deliberate and talk through it a little bit, I wouldn't be opposed to having a little bit of that now to kind of set the ground for our own meetings and our own time. But again, it was just really helpful to talk about it with some of the other commission members.
Thanks, Kenny. Any other thoughts? So it is 4:25 now, and we are you know, have already been talking about this for a while, so we're good on time. I just am wondering if we did talk about it a little bit now, can we do that? Because it's not exactly agendized, but you know, it is part of what we did at the retreat.
to jump in and say two things. One is, yeah, I would call it agendized because it is a direct follow-up on the retreat. So I'm comfortable if you are talking about it now. I did want to provide one update that is a follow-up on the retreat from the Housing and Community Development side. Just thinking about the subcommittee membership and staff liaisons. So a few different things just to be thinking about to support you. We met, staff met, and Ernesto Portillo will continue as he's been doing to serve as the staff liaison to help with communication and logistics. I've asked Allison Miller, who oversees a lot of the different program areas, to serve as the primary person helping with agenda setting and really helping the chairs create agendas and set agendas. For each of the subcommittees, I've assigned a particular HCD staff person to help in terms of answer questions and really support those subcommittees. Really thinking about what those subcommittees' goals are and who makes the most sense. We will have another staff person to help with the legal action reports for the subcommittees. But just wanted to let you know moving forward, and I've asked the different staff liaisons to get with the chairs of the subcommittees, but Sarah Megason will continue to support the Affordable Housing Subcommittee. The Equitable Housing Strategies, I've asked Lena Perel to support that particular subcommittee. This is an area she's been working on quite a bit. And then for the Housing First subcommittee, I've asked Austin Puka to support that subcommittee. She is our lead working with Tucson Pima Collaboration to end homelessness. So thinking that that could help. So that's an update from the HCD end in terms of some of those follow-ups, and happy to answer any more questions related to that. But we're trying to figure out how best to support you all to achieve all those things you're identified you're interested in doing.
That's great.
So maybe we can run through the last couple of bullet points and then circle back and see if we want to take the time today to discuss the mission. Does that sound like a plan?
Which bullet points would you like to cover next?
Well, it looked like Anne just covered the subcommittee membership and staff liaisons. So the next three: presentation, mayor and council, the meeting facilitation, and the website posting resources. Is that y'all?
And do you not want to talk about meeting daytime format, the first bullet?
Yeah, let's cover that as well.
Okay. Well, so I mean, you don't obviously have everyone here, but at least you all can weigh in on this. So you could, I guess you talked about changing to all in person, or you could do alternating in person. You could do quarterly in person. You could do everyone is in person with hybrid option. I mean, you have various choices. I don't think we have access to your polling ability ourselves, but did you make a poll at all, Jay, like a Zoom poll or not?
No, not that I'm aware of.
So why don't maybe people can just well, you can't chat, but if we could just go around to, you only have 7 members, right? Can we just maybe each one just speak to really briefly if you have a preference for, I guess it's like on a spectrum, all in person, all virtual, or some combination, something in between. Do you want to call on your members really, and each person just share briefly what your preferences are?
Also, just real quick, I saw Vicky posted in the chat that she'd like to be made a panelist.
Tried promoting her. I think she has to accept. Okay, there you go.
Okay, what's everybody's preference for meetings? Go ahead, Lori.
I was just gonna say, I think we need to add, because it lists it here, whether we change the time or not as well, that may affect whether people can meet in person. So I don't know if that's on the table.
Right, and in person means you'd have to add a half an hour on either side, probably for drive, parking, all of that in your consideration.
Go ahead, Vicky.
As I've said before, I think there needs to be the option for virtual meetings. There should never just be mandatory in person, and that is from a commission perspective to ensure that we always have quorum, but it also makes it more accessible to people from the public to join.
Thanks, Vicky. Mark?
So, going back to in person, which I have a fondness for in person meetings, but I also on this particular day of the month I have stacked up from with back to back meetings from noon to 4, 3 of which I have to run, and so just selfishly it'd be very difficult for me to actually switch on this particular day to in person, and I also really strongly support Vicky's position about accessibility issues. And I actually think we function pretty well in whatever this is, virtually. The county commission actually is a hybrid meeting. Sorry, I'm not very articulate today. The county commission is a hybrid meeting, and probably about 60-40 or maybe 50-50. Megan probably, well, that I always find that to be a little more clumsy than one way or the other, frankly, but it is a possibility too.
Thanks, Mark. Go ahead, Tisha.
Yeah, from a personal standpoint, I'm flexible. But as a commissioner, I actually think transparency and accountability, that we should be in person as an option at minimum. I actually think the opposite of Vicky. I think accessibility excludes the internet, computers, and such. I actually think that you'll have community transparency, accountability in person.
Thanks, Tisha. Wendy?
So I am of the opinion that virtual is more accessible. Sorry, Tish. And personally, it would really be difficult for me to get to a meeting at 4 o'clock on a regular basis. I couldn't even get to this one on time today virtually because I had back-to-back meetings and people in my office. So an example today, I wouldn't have shown up in person because by the time I got in my car at 4:15, the meeting would have been half over and I wouldn't have bothered. Whereas I felt like I could show up 15 minutes late and not be disruptive. So for me, it's much more convenient for the meetings to be virtual or hybrid. And I agree with Mark, hybrids can be clunky and difficult, but if we've got differences of opinion about which is more accessible, that's one way to address that. Thanks.
Thanks, Wendy. Go ahead, Marcos.
Yeah, I would recommend hybrid as well. I think it provides options for those who want to attend in person. And as commented previously, there's, depending on which way you look at it, you've got accessibility either way. And I think if you can get the right technology, it reduces the clumsiness. I've attended in person for our county meetings as well as online. And I know after we got the I don't know, I call it surround sound speaker and microphone, I guess is what it is.
Yeah.
And it's it's improved greatly as far as, you know, when you're attending virtually, you can hear a lot better because the microphone follows, you know, you know, who's ever talking. So you know, if you know, I'm sure the city can get that type of technology, or if they don't already have it. So that would be my suggestion. And then, you know, to encourage in-person meeting, I think a few times a year would not be a bad idea to kind of bring folks together. You know, and but still with an option for the you know, to attend hybrid for those that can't make it. So that's my suggestion.
Thanks, Marcos. Vicky?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I mean, in terms of the issue about accountability, I think to ensure accountability, these meetings have to be accessible to the public. And there's, you know, holding them only in person, I think, is denying access to many people. And many of the people that we're talking about, you know, that is the purpose of these meetings. There are many disabled older adults as well as low-income people who do not have the transportation and or resources to get to an in-person meeting. And then I will also tell you that sign language interpreters are very hard to come by right now. It is a little easier to get them virtually than in person. And just last week, I think it was last week, one of my staff was denied a sign language interpreter for the city council meeting because they couldn't get one. And so it wasn't accessible. And she really wanted to go and speak publicly and couldn't. And, you know, I'll deal with that separately about that issue. But that's just an example. It is a lot easier to get some of those accommodations when they can be done virtually.
Thanks, Vicky. Maggie?
I agree with everyone. I think hybrid is a good option, and also, you know, to what Marco said, I think if we have the right technology, it would make it less cumbersome and less confusing. I've found that I get both sides of the accessibility issues. I do, you know, think that some people don't have internet access. You know, they use their phones, so they do have maybe some access to attend virtually. So I'm for a hybrid if we have the right technology, and also periodically maybe, you know, meetings in person. That's another option. Thanks.
Thanks, Maggie. Anybody else want to chime in? Go ahead, Kenny.
Yeah, I'm in support of a hybrid mode. The time and date tends to work for me. So for all the reasons stated, yeah, hybrid. I know it probably asks a little bit more for staff. If we couldn't encourage folks that are able to make it in person, I think that would make things effective and productive.
Thanks, Kenny. Ray?
I think if we were to do some in person, I would think periodically, like if it's every 3 months, if it's every 6 months, just a couple times a year, we're trying to make the intention. That still has a hybrid option, but that wouldn't be every month.
Thanks, Ray. Lori?
I agree with Ray. I think I would be willing to meet in person even every other month. I would prefer quarterly or maybe every 6 months, but for all the reasons folks listed, I think it's more flexible to offer options and for it not necessarily to be in person, because folks are working a full day and then driving what I'm assuming would be downtown and back, and just adding a lot to a work day.
Thanks, Lori. I guess I feel like I think the virtual meeting makes it easier for more people to attend and makes it easier for quorum. And I think there's a lot of that it does convenience wise. But I did really appreciate meeting with everybody in person at the retreat. So I think there's a lot of value there. So I guess I kind of tend to agree with Lori. I think it would be nice to meet in person, quarterly or once every 6 months, and we would be able to, plan that out, and people would be able to schedule it more easily. If you've got 3 months to plan it. But I guess I wonder how many people, if we do a hybrid meeting quarterly or whatever, are many people actually going to come? Because it's just so convenient to do it online. So it's like 3 people are coming to the in-person meeting and you still got 20 people online, then, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, I think we could try that, but, yeah, that's my opinion.
What we've found is, so one thing is to do a hybrid meeting to the best of the ability and the technology and see how it goes, and you can evaluate it a little better then. But if hybrid meetings are what you always do, then you'll get a lot of people who'll just, oh God, it's so much easier to just call in. But if you have their periodic in person, and everybody is asked to make an effort to come in person, and then you always have a few joining virtually, which is why there is a hybrid. But maybe, so maybe it would be, you could try a hybrid meeting in whenever and test it out and see how you want to do it, and then have more virtual, and then a 3 months, 6 months, whatever your frequency is, and with special time, consideration for the in-person. And then just consider this year going to be how you're going to test it out. And it's not like you can't change it.
Right. Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Well, I was just going to sort of reinforce something Tani just said. I know at the last county commission meeting, one of the commissioners who I'm not sure she'd ever been in person, showed up. So, I suspect some of that may change over time, depending upon how you keep doing the meetings. And that commission hasn't had any fully in-person meetings, as I recall. So for me, because I think one of the early ones who said I've got big problems, quarterly, it would be much easier for me to figure out how to make quarterlies work, and I probably could. 6 months, every 6 months would be easier, but I think quarterly is reasonable too. So.
Tisha?
Yeah, I also know that it's difficult to change things after things have been going a certain way. So even, making something prospective so that when future, set the expectation up front. I know we're kind of in a weird period where we're kind of more into the post-pandemic period. So the expectation setting for the ones on the board or on the commission currently may be different. So, setting something now for who sits on the commission and a prospective approach may be moving forward so that the expectation is there for future commissioners.
Thanks, Tisha. So I think what I'm hearing is that it sounds like we want to basically remain virtual and then decide whether or not we want to do quarterly or every 6 month hybrid meetings. Is that accurate? Because if that's kind of where we're landing, I would say we could go with that. But if we feel like we need to do a vote, doodle poll because we're not certain. What do y'all think? Should we move forward with basically virtual and then hybrid every quarter? Somebody want to make a motion? I mean, that'd be one way to figure it out.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
So the motion would be that we would have virtual meetings and then every once a quarter So I guess 4 times a year we would have a hybrid meeting. That's the motion and the second.
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Okay.
Any opposed?
I am. Mindy.
Mindy, anyone else opposed? Any abstentions?
Yeah, I'm opposed. I'd prefer a hybrid.
Okay.
And I guess my vote is to abstain. You know, I think the emphasis on having a hybrid with the virtual option, I think encouraging the commissioners as much as possible to be there in person will make a difference.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify. I was thinking that the motion would still have the hybrid option. It would be once a quarter encouraging in person, but to still have a virtual option. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, I'm confused now too, because now I don't know if I like my vote. Could somebody actually read the motion? Because I mean, I would support, I do not vote for any mandatory in-person meetings. There has to be a virtual option. Is that what we're voting on?
Well, go ahead, Tani.
Well, it seems like when you say in person, it means like in person with a hybrid option, never in person only, that there would be always a hybrid option. And if it's virtual, then it's virtual only. And you're not doing in person only. And you were looking at virtual and quarterly, maybe that I didn't write it down, quarterly in person with hybrid option.
Yeah,
That's what I understood.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when I clarified it would essentially be, the motion is that we would have 8 virtual meetings a year, and then we would have 4 meetings that are hybrid. And a hybrid meeting would mean it's in person and the technology is there for attendance virtually as well. So I think that's what we're voting on. It seems like that's the understanding.
And I'll just say, when you use a Meeting Owl Pro, which I don't know if you guys have, we have them. It allows the view to show on the people sitting in the room, because you can be at a disadvantage if you're online and everybody else is sitting in person and all you see is a room of people. But if you're using the right technology and you can actually see people when they talk, you feel more, and they become a box on your screen, then it feels a little bit more equitable.
So just for clarification, I'd like to do a roll call vote. I think we have clarified what the motion is. We have a second. Again, what I understand is that we're talking about having 8 virtual meetings a year, and then 4 hybrid meetings a year. And those 4 hybrid meetings would be in person that are not mandatory, but there would be a virtual option to attend the meetings as well as described. So that's the motion on the floor. And I'm going to do a roll call vote. Maggie?
Aye.
Wendy?
Aye.
Marianne is absent. Mindy?
I'm abstaining.
Okay. Mark?
Aye.
Vicky?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
Tisha?
I oppose. I prefer a hybrid option.
Okay. Jim is absent. Ray?
Aye.
Kenny?
I would also be opposed, understanding that any in-person meeting would have a virtual option that people could call in. But my preference would be to meet in person.
And I vote yay. I believe that is everybody. So we have 7 yay, 2 nay, and 1 abstention. So the ayes have it. The motion passes. So we will, going forward, be meeting virtually 8 times a year and quarterly the hybrid option as we discussed. Okay, so what's next on we just covered the meeting format. I guess we didn't really establish the time, but it seems like this time was working for folks. I don't know if we want to go into the time as well. I don't know if we can do that at this point. I mean, you know, with so many options, I guess the question would be, do we keep the time the same, or do we want to explore changing the time?
I think with the flexibility of keeping it virtual, I'm more okay with the time. I don't mean keeping it virtual, having a virtual option. I think if we were going to go in person completely, I would have wanted to discuss time.
Any other thoughts about time? I'm fine with this time. Mindy, go ahead.
I'm fine with this time as well.
Is there anyone who has an issue with this time at all? Maybe that's a better way.
So this is Vicky. I do have a conflict with another state meeting. So I just may be late like I was today. Sometimes I can get coverage for the other meeting. So just occasionally I might have that conflict for the first half hour.
Got it. Thanks, Vicky. Anyone else? Okay, so it seems like we will be sticking with this time, at least for the time being. Where does that leave us on the agenda? I guess Tani and Colleen, what's next with you guys in this agenda item?
Well, it sounds like we've discussed what we needed to. You'll let us know if you want any assistance with the final revisions. Again, we're not available for your April date. We are for the May date, just so you know.
What about the presentation to mayor and council and the website and posting resources? Is that somebody else covering those items?
Yeah, right. I think we've just been having some conversations about how we can update the CHD website to be a little bit more user friendly, and make sure that the resources like equity studies and PCHIP are a little bit more readily accessible. So if folks have ideas or examples that they love, feel free to I think shout them out now. But just I think space is at HCD is going to work on cleaning that up a little bit.
Do we need to have that as an agenda item next time, or do you want to bring that back? I mean, what's the kind of next steps for that to get it resolved?
Good question. Yeah, I think we can plan on giving it, if we manage to make some significant updates, we can plan on giving an update next month.
One of the things I'm curious about is, you know, obviously we want to be transparent, accessible to the public, et cetera. But, you know, when we have resources or articles or whatever that we want to share with the full commission, does that have to go through HCD? I'm just wondering if there's a way that we can all have access to like a shared drive or some sort of place where we can share ourselves without necessarily needing to burden HCD staff. And then I know that also, you know, dealing with websites in a big bureaucracy can be challenging as well. So, you know, getting stuff posted on a website through city staff, I just wonder if there's an easier way that we could do that. And what's necessary, like what do we have to do in order to be in compliance and best practices?
sort of look to Anne to be our keeper of open meeting law rules of the commission. I don't know that we have like within the city, like, right, we have OneDrive at the city. If just having like an open Dropbox that could be accessible publicly, if that, I'm just brainstorming out loud, would work. But go ahead, Ian.
I think sharing information is fine as long as it's information and you're not discussing it outside of meetings. So that's the biggest open meeting challenge is really kind of if you have a quorum, even via a document, commenting, talking together. I believe you all and Neto can confirm and resend this, have an email, have each other's emails. You're welcome to share emails. You just can't, as a quorum, talk about that information. It's not very hard for us to, I think for spirit of transparency, we've been trying to post information that you all are kind of sharing, and because I do think members of the public do have an interest in what the commission is doing, it's not very hard for us to post. So 2 options. One, we will make sure you have people's email list. You can share information with each other. You just can't, as a quorum, talk about it outside of meetings. And then 2, it's not a burden for us to post the document to the website.
I wonder if you could create a listserv then. I mean, it's kind of what having everybody's email is one thing, but then having a listserv that kind of has a higher functionality might work as well. But go ahead, Tisha.
Yeah, so to that point, we talked in 2 separate subcommittees about doing a Google Drive where we would just share links to information. We're not discussing them. We're not on at the same time, although we could technically, theoretically be on at the same time. And then after, at each meeting, making sure that those items were on the agenda for the public. But I guess one question I had is whether that Google Doc should always be made available via link to the public. I guess I should start there.
Mark?
So I believe I've heard in the past that the reply all feature in emails is a problem. And so I'm not clear how inviting people to comment on something that everybody can see is different than essentially a reply all email. And it may be.
That is correct. That is what I'm saying you can't do.
But we can't share. It's just you can't reply all and then comment on that particular thing.
So,
exactly.
So who is going to be the moderator of that to delete, especially if this is open to the general public? Who's going to be the moderator to delete comments? That's I guess a question I would have. Is that a role staff? Because I assume some of us are going to actually, just kind of comment. And then we end up potentially exposed, I guess. Or do you simply not, that's the problem. So, or you could lock it up so people can't actually, then people can't post stuff. So how do you, if you make it so people actually can't comment, then they can't post stuff either. So,
And that's why I'm saying if you all want the public to have access, just give it to us. We'll post it to a resources page on the website. That feels easiest to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think that seems easiest. So at this point, we will, I guess we all know that if there are things that we want to share with everybody on the commission, we can email them to Neto.
Correct.
And also, Allison, you are potentially looking into some other options that may work better that address the open meetings laws issues and just general functionality.
Yes.
Any other thoughts or comments about website and posting resources? Trying to see if there's anything else under this agenda item that we need to address. It seems like we've kind of run out of time in terms of talking about the mission that we were going to. So maybe what we need to do is have that as an agenda item for the next meeting. It'll give the last subcommittee that hasn't met to discuss this a chance to discuss it. And it'll give all of us as individuals as well the opportunity to continue to comment on the notes that everybody has received already. And maybe it'd be a good idea just one last time to get those notes out to the commission again. I don't know, maybe post it on the website. Anything else under this agenda item? Does that sound reasonable to everybody? Anything that we've missed or need to touch on before we move on to the next agenda item?
Jay, do you feel like you have clarity on the subcommittee membership? Did you want to go over that at all?
Sure, I can just briefly. So for the housing equitable housing strategy, I still don't have the new name of my subcommittee clear in my head yet, but the formerly known as the Housing Desegregation Subcommittee. We have a couple of new members, and I guess the understanding was new members can just kind of join up, and there's not really a formal process. So I just wanted to make sure that that is accurate. And if there's, if new members want to join subcommittees, if it's just they need to show up and get essentially asked to be on the subcommittee and then are essentially on it. Is there anything else that needs to be done? I think that's generally the question that we had.
The question is, this is not the question is, does it need a full commission vote? Yes or no?
Or just what other than showing up to a subcommittee and asking to be on the subcommittee needs to happen? Because some folks showed up and we said, you're on the subcommittee, and left it at that. Does anything else aside from that need to happen? Whether it's to the full commission or, some sort of document or anything else that needs to happen for folks to join a subcommittee?
I don't think anything formally needs to happen, but as you're talking and updating the mission goals, etc., just put in your membership so it's clear for for quorum, etc.
And then I guess the other thing that we figured is that based on the number of commissioners for the full commission, you can only have up to 5 on a subcommittee. Otherwise, if you have 6 and 6 show up, then you have quorum for a full commission meeting, which is not what we're trying to do. Is that accurate, Anne?
My understanding is you could go up to 6. Technically, since 7 right now is a quorum, and that may change though as you add more members. But for now, technically, if 6 folks are interested, that would not be a quorum of the full.
So you for any subcommittee can have quorum -1.
Right.
Okay. All right. So we can go up to 6. Any other questions about, that was mostly my question, I think, but any other questions about subcommittees, joining subcommittees, how many members, et cetera, et cetera? Okay. Anything else before we move on to the next agenda item? Is that all for you, Tony and Colleen? Are you guys sticking around for the meeting, or are you logging off?
We'll do whatever you want.
You're welcome to stay if you like, obviously, but if there's nothing else, I guess you can.
We'll stay for a little while and then we'll yeah, we're interested in hearing the next item.
Okay, great. So moving on, key HCD projects for CEHD involvement. It looks like first up is Jason and Lena.
And I'll jump in and invite Allison just to do a kind of umbrella overview here. My understanding is trying to give the commission a heads up on what's coming and what things that we know will want your input on. And so trying to message early these key things that we know are happening this year. And I'll kick it off to Lena and Jason to talk about the people, communities, and homes investment plan, and may jump in as it's one of the first projects I worked on when I came over to housing, but I'll turn it over to them who are doing the real work.
Jason, I don't know if you want to start.
I appreciate being acknowledged, but really this is Lena has put this presentation together and really is great to go.
And you all see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Lena Perel, and I'm a lead planner on the Strategic Planning and Community Engagement team here at the city's Housing, Community, and Development Department. I'm going to be talking about HCD's People, Communities, and Homes Investment Plan, or as we call it, PCHIP, and the update we're planning on doing this year. So I'm just going to quickly do a brief overview of the current PCHIP, go over some example projects PCHIP has funded in the past, share a brief 2024 update timeline, to briefly discuss our community engagement strategy, and then kind of open it for a discussion on how the commission would like to be involved with kind of this update going forward. So PCHIP, or the People, Communities, and Homes Investment Plan, was adopted by Mayor and Council on January 20th, 2021. So it serves as a framework for investing in Tucson's most vulnerable populations by directing funding for homeless services, housing stability, neighborhood enhancements, and more. It was built on previous community plans, the most current data, and broad public outreach. And it helps identify priorities that are eligible for support from Tucson's federal and local funding sources that are administered by HCD. And the intention is to update the PCHIP every 5 years. So we're kind of getting to that point right now. So the PCHIP focuses on 3 interrelated aspects of building a better Tucson, which are people, communities, and homes. I just kind of had the goals that we had under these different focus areas. So for people, the goal of thriving individuals and families with opportunities to lead self-sufficient and fulfilled lives, equitable access to jobs and income, health, supportive services, and education for all Tucsonans. Under communities, vibrant and inclusive neighborhoods with safe and welcoming streets, sidewalks, bus shelters, parks, and other key infrastructure. A supportive community with quality nonprofit organizations, health clinics, and childcare facilities. And under homes, every Tucsonan has access to a safe, decent, and affordable home, the first step towards life stability. So just a few very brief examples of projects PCHIP has helped fund. The nonprofit organization Youth on Their Own, they were funded $100,000 for stipends to help homeless youth graduate high school. And for affordable housing development, there's funding that's gone towards Newport at Rodeo. And the City of Tucson's Housing First program, how that has helped an expansion from a staff of 3, I think in 2020, to the current staff of 34 it is today. And kind of jumping into what we're doing this year. So this is a brief overview or a timeline of what we're trying to do to update PCHIP this year. So right now we're in the February to April, which is our data literature review. We're hoping to start community engagement mid-April and do that through the end of June or maybe even into a little July. And then July is mostly going to be data processing, coming up with recommendations for development and drafting the plan. And in August, kind of having the internal review and revisions, but then also community and stakeholder review. and to have a final draft of the new PCHIP in September for it to be adopted by Mayor and Council in October. So I discussed that we have a community engagement strategy. So I'm going to briefly go over some of the key aspects of that. So our goals for our community engagement in the spring is to gather meaningful and comprehensive feedback, foster equity, inclusion, and belonging to make sure that perspectives and participation of a broad range of community members are represented in the plan. Making sure the public has the information they need to participate in ways that are appropriate for their experiences, building trust and transparency between our communities and the city and our department, and making sure that the community feels their input has been thoughtfully considered and sees their contributions reflected in the plan. Right now, our key participants for engagement are just the general public, but specifically trying to target vulnerable populations, youth, seniors, and unsheltered populations for input. Mayor and Council and City of Tucson leadership, the Commission, local organizations, service providers, funding recipients, and participants, subject matter experts, and HCD or COT staff. Mindy, I see your hand up.
I do, thank you. I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but with the general, by engaging key participants, how were you, what were your plans on finding and meeting with?
Yep, and I think we're going to go over the methods of engagement on the next slide, so I can go into that a little more.
Put my hand down.
Okay. Whoops. So some ways that we're planning to engage the community. So we're definitely going to have a project website that will have any relevant information, how to be involved, surveys, anything like that. We're going to have email and print materials, so postcards and newsletters. We'll use the media. We plan on having an online survey that we're going to start publish in April and have print surveys available. We're going to do more traditional pop-up and public events. So showing up in places where events are already happening and people are already gathering and kind of building off of those. We plan to have some community workshops, public meetings, and public forums on more specific policy topics that maybe are geared more towards subject matter experts. Focus groups, and then trying to have some more creative, interactive online and in-person tools. So again, we're trying to reach communities or populations that typically won't come out you won't see at a public meeting or at a public forum. So we want to try to have creative ways to reach out to people who don't want to just come to a meeting, but meet them where they are. And then this is kind of where I think we can open it more into a discussion. We don't have to do all of these things here, but just talking about the commission's involvement. Would love some feedback on the community engagement goals, participants, and methods of doing that engagement. As a recommendation, I'm happy to come back to the monthly meetings to provide updates and receive feedback on where we are on the process. If commissioners are interested, I'm happy to do more of like a work session for commissioners to weigh in on goals and priorities and how PCHIP should be used. And if there are people who are really interested and really want to kind of dig their teeth into PCHIP, we're also talked about we could have a steering committee specifically full of commission members for PCHIP. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Lena. We will open it up to discussion. Good, Mindy.
I would be interested in participating with the steering committee.
Thanks, Mindy. Anyone else? Comments, thoughts? I guess one of the things I'm wondering is, what's most useful for HCD? I mean, what's most useful for HCD? I think that would really color what I think I would like to do or the commission should do.
I think what would be most helpful for, I think us, I think definitely doing the monthly updates, I think would be helpful. I think having some sort of work session maybe sometime in the spring, where we can have as many commission members, whether it's at the commission level or at the subcommittees, where all commission members can kind of have their chance to provide their input in that kind of format. I'm not a steering committee. If enough commission members want it, we can do that. But I also think that maybe just doing the work session sometime this spring during our community engagement window could suffice as well.
And if I can hop in there too, Lena, I think the work session really from that place of like subject matter expertise, but then also as we plan to have some like focus groups or community workshops with subject matter experts, knowing that a lot of those subject matter experts sit at this table, a willingness to participate in some of those sessions where you have relevant expertise and interest, and to help us with recruiting others to do so.
Any
I
other?
was- I had a question. Just as this process continues, is there a way to kind of regularly share, like, whether it's by neighborhood or something, who's been engaged, so we can kind of see if there's more outreach to be done in certain areas, or just demographically?
Yep, we are planning to kind of gather that information of as we're engaging, trying to figure out who we're engaging with and where they are, and we can definitely provide that as an update to the commission.
Anyone else? Any other thoughts? Well, I definitely really like the idea of participating in some work sessions in the spring. I think that's a concrete thing that, we can dig into, and particularly if we, I'm sure as you get closer, you'll have more ideas about what those work sessions look like. But, the sooner that we can have some ideas about what the work sessions would be like, and kind of what information and what participation from the commission would look like sounds great to me. And then obviously the monthly updates seems like a no-brainer as well, particularly related to Kenny's question. And I think our participation as commissioners in the work sessions, those monthly updates will help kind of keep us up to speed and understanding what's going on with that. Any other thoughts or comments? Go ahead, Lena.
No, I was just going to say that sounds great. Happy to do the updates and kind of come together or solidify more of what the work sessions will look like, and we'll communicate that.
Great. Oh yeah, go ahead, Maggie.
Just wondering that, as a commissioner, I represent an agency that receives PCHIP. Is there any kind of conflict for me, for instance, to participate in this? I have lots of ideas.
I'm going to let Jason take that one. I don't think there is.
Yeah, so in the planning process for the plan, Maggie, there's no conflict, right? Like we know that who we fund and who has lots of expertise. That Venn diagram has a whole lot of overlap. And so when we're kind of writing the plan, there's no sort of conflict. Everyone is a community member shaping a community plan. When we get to the kinds of asks that we make later in the process, once the plan's been approved, and now we're talking about grant making, things like that, and where we would come back to the commission and ask commissioners to participate in review panels, those types of activities you wouldn't be able to do if you're an applicant for that funding, right? Just because of the natural conflict of interest there. Much like when we did the recent review of the affordable housing development, those folks who were conflicted just recused themselves from that process. So later there will be opportunities to participate where conflicted members wouldn't be able to, but in this point in the process, it's completely open.
Thank you.
I'll also make sure not to say give all the money to Southwest Fair Housing Council when we have these meetings. So thank you for clarifying, Maggie. Any other thoughts or comments? Okay, looks like Allison, you are up for the Prosperity Initiative.
Sure, thanks, Jay. And want to recognize Bonnie Bazada joined us at the last minute. Thanks for being here, Bonnie. I think so. Speaking of very relevant and interrelated things going on, right? A prosperity initiative will be something we'll be looking at tying into PCHIP, and right, all of the work that we did in terms of evidence-based policies, and how that can relate to, for instance, the agencies and programs that we fund with PCHIP. We're really, I think that the timing will be nice as we're figuring out kind of prosperity initiative and kind of the next round of PCHIP. So my goal today was just kind of to do a really kind of brief teaser overview of prosperity initiative and where things sit right now, and then mostly give homework to have a kind of more informed meeting at our or conversation at the next CEHD meeting. So I think I will share my screen and basically run really fast through Bonnie's presentation to Mayor and Council in January, just to kind of give a brief overview. You all have, you've kind of given feedback throughout the Prosperity Initiative process. I will also say, right, on some of the specific policies that kind of related to housing and neighborhood stability. So I imagine this is a little bit of an overview for most of you, but just kind of setting the stage now that these policies have been adopted. So 1 second. All right. Oh, share. Okay. Can you see my screen? Great. Okay. So, no? There we go. All right. Figuring it out. So, right, kind of timeline of the Prosperity Initiative, right? Councilmember Lane Santa Cruz invited Bonnie to a mayor and council meeting in April of 2022 to kind of talk about what poverty looked like emerging from the pandemic, and how do we kind of really start to move the needle tackling kind of intergenerational persistent poverty in Tucson and Pima County. That kind of morphed into, right, this regional approach, particularly between the county and city staff, really led by Bonnie, but bringing in a lot of regional, of kind of cities and towns, tribal organizations, to talk how do we think about this big picture. So right, you all were kind of involved in, particularly as we brought 2 initial policies forward to mayor and council in April of last year. We talked about the housing mobility policy more in depth, and presented mayor and council with an early childhood education policy at that time. And then, so right, timeline wise, the full Prosperity Initiative report was adopted by the Pima County Board of Supervisors in December of 2023, and then by mayor and council in January of this year, 2024. So I'm not going to go through all of these slides, but as you all know, the main reason of having the Prosperity Initiative is really this persistent poverty that we see across Tucson and Pima County, in particular high or low child opportunity scores in Tucson and Pima County. And so the real goal here was looking at those policies that can help reduce intergenerational poverty, that are evidence-based, and have a really strong ROI. So policies that can improve earnings, reduce expenses, create opportunities to build and protect assets, improve health, and improve educational attainment. and really looking at the kind of upstream solutions, right? A lot of what we have tended to fund at the city level are kind of those alleviating suffering poverty solutions, and I think the goal here was really trying to push us to be thinking about policies that we can adopt that can kind of transform the way we work at the city and county, and fund things that prevent poverty long term. So again, here the direction that the Prosperity Initiative really went towards was looking at these evidence-based policies, and that was a big lift to find research-backed programs that have been shown to impact those pieces that we just talked about, increasing income, reducing expenses, things like that. So all of the working group members on the evidence-based side, right, really brought in University of Arizona researchers like Brian Mayer and Keith Bentley, who you have also heard from throughout 2023. A lot of meetings and individuals involved in all of this work. And right, the goal here was not to look at every single thing that can be done to prevent and address poverty, but to find policies that can really work at the local government level. I'll let you all read all of the guiding principles, but I think we've gone through most of them. So there were 13 policies that really fit under 4 policy areas: education, critical family resources, asset building, and infrastructure priorities. And then there were these kind of cross-policy strategies that really worked across all of those components. I'm going to go through each of the 13 policies just so you can like see them. But I just want to, at the moment, just kind of tease, right? I'm hoping for homework for the commission members that you would be willing to read through the Prosperity Initiative if you haven't already, or review it again with the lens of how do we see the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development for the city of Tucson helping to navigate, helping the city navigate how we implement these policies. And so we'll be curious to understand from your perspective, do we want to talk about all 13? Do we want to really focus on the housing and neighborhood specific policies? Kind of where does it make the most sense for this commission, based on the conversations you just had at your retreat and today? How can we match some of these policies with the work that you're trying to do? So under education, right, increase access to quality early childhood, childcare, and education. Increase pathways to post-secondary education. Increase housing mobility and opportunity. I'm going to linger on these ones a little bit, right? So this is, I think that this policy in particular maybe takes a few different terms sometimes, right? We've often in this commission talked about housing desegregation here, right? Moving folks to areas of providing opportunities to live in areas of higher opportunity. Kind of how does this, how can we expand equitable housing opportunities? And then improving housing stability. We know that foreclosures, evictions really launch people into, and other forms of housing instability really launch folks and perpetuate poverty. So what are policies and ways of doing our work that can improve housing stability and reduce that instability? On the critical family resources on health, increase health coverage and reduce medical debt, reduce unintended pregnancies, and increase expand broadband services and address barriers to digital inclusion, prioritize workforce development for underserved populations, asset building, financial capability in small business, improve financial capability and support small businesses, transportation and job quality, prioritize transportation options to connect disadvantaged communities to jobs and resources, improve job quality for low-income workers. On the neighborhood end too, you all, I'm trying to remember if it was September, August, but we did have Keith Bentley come and talk about this policy in particular as a bit of a counterpart to the housing mobility policy, right? If part of what we're doing is expanding access to higher opportunity areas, what are we doing to invest in and create equitable opportunities in those higher poverty areas? And that has its own kind of set of concerns around displacement and all manner of equity issues. So here, they were really able to find research that identified that place matters, right? And growing up in a higher poverty area affects kids and residents of that area, but that we really have to be intentional about the way that we make investments in higher poverty areas to ensure access to those opportunities and build community wealth. All right, I think I'm going to pause there. Those are 13 policies. I'm going to ask Bonnie, what did I butcher in your presentation, and open it up for questions. And really, I think that's my homework is I'm hoping to send out kind of, I think just all of the mayor and council materials. So there's a memo, there's that presentation from Bonnie, and then there's the full report along with, I can give you a timestamp link to the mayor and council discussion there, just so you kind of have all of that context, and would hope to have a conversation of how does the commission want to plug in. Bonnie, do you want to add anything?
You did a wonderful job, Allison. I just want to let everyone know, if you have, beyond this conversation, if there's any questions that you have, ideas, please, I'll put my contact information in the chat and feel free to reach out anytime. And it's a big chunk of work, and yeah, so Ray.
Thank you so much for your work on this and for sharing today. I was wondering what HCD is already planning in terms of implementing this.
So, right, I think one of the biggest pieces is integrating prosperity initiative lessons into PCHIP, right, as one of our primary opportunities for supporting the community and kind of advancing the department and the city's goals. I'd say that's the biggest one at the moment, right? Kind of direction from mayor and council in January was to start looking towards, how do we work citywide to implement these policies? And so we're starting to have those conversations as we're continuing to meet with the rest of the Prosperity Initiative, and participating in Urban Institute learning cohort of how do we measure our impact. So kind of definitely, I would say in early stages of identifying all of the implementation components. And I think the first part is really identifying what in city work is currently, currently addresses Prosperity Initiative components, and how can those things be more efficient or scaled. But so short answer is, I think really working to integrate Prosperity Initiatives into PCHIP in the short term.
And I would just
Thank
add,
you.
we're taking that on at the county level too. And I just was speaking to Allison earlier about, how I can support the city in doing it, because that's a big task to go through everything. But also the equity office has done such a terrific job the last couple of years of kind of doing that inventory and assessment and guiding departments through that. So we'll try to look for how we can be as thorough but also efficient in those processes. And we're also looking for lots of opportunities for collaboration. And Megan knows we were just looking at the Financial Empowerment Center under the financial capability policy. Both the city and county are interested in it. Municipality has to take a lead. So what an opportunity for collaboration between our two entities. So a lot of work to roll out, but and one other thing just to mention too, and I recognize Tisha particularly as being such a great partner in helping us think about how we can create a community counterpart to this effort, so that is working in tandem with the city and the county, but also autonomously. And because that's a space where we can bring a lot of sector engagement and innovation, be able to really, work together, but do things that city and county are likely not to do, but provide opportunities for many more people in our community to get involved.
Any other thoughts or comments?
Well, I also want to thank Bonnie. This is just a major endeavor, and to have both the city and the county behind it is huge. And I think it's something to be lifted up nationwide. That being said, the Housing First subcommittee has met, and we will be looking into implementation practices, perhaps other examples from similar cities. And we will be presenting that by way of recommendation for implementation on the housing component of the 13 policies. So we thank you, Bonnie, for your leadership, and for the city and the county.
Yeah, I would also add, I just think this framework is critical for, providing the cover essentially to really uplift policies that are truly equitable for housing and the other aspects of equity that I think are important to all of us. And I also think it just goes back to what we've been talking about as a commission for so long, that does seem to be getting some momentum, but how are we measuring this stuff? If we don't really drill down and figure out where we are now and where we are in, whether it's next month or 10 years from now, it's hard to know how effective it's going to be. And I think we can really put some meat on the bone in terms of actual policies that move the needle. And I think this framework provides a much needed, covers maybe not the right way, but to say it, but cover to actually create some policy that will have some impact. So again, Bonnie, everybody else that's worked on this, I think just kudos to y'all for doing this. And I think it's great to see the buy-in from, all of the jurisdictions in Pima County that have worked on this. I mean, that's huge, because it's one region. And if, a couple of jurisdictions are sitting out, it's a lot less effective. So, and we as the, subcommittee I'm working on, we will also be using this going forward as, how we're doing our work. So certainly will show up in our subcommittee.
Thanks, Jay. And I just want to say, so many people contributed this, including many of you on this call, and will continue to contribute to it, right? Because it's a big, fascinating, messy process that we're going through.
Any other thoughts or comments about the Prosperity Initiative? All right. Thanks, Allison and Bonnie. Now other items, brief context on other HCD initiatives coming to CEHD, update on the plan for public housing scattered site units.
Yeah, so part of our goal here with this item is just setting the table on things that we'll be wanting input in and bringing back to you. And so many of you have participated. We had a task group working on recommendations around our scattered sites. We are taking those recommendations, and it was, again, sort of a framework. And so we're going through and now looking at what that means in terms of our inventory to have more of an idea. We're hoping to wrap that up in the next few weeks or so, and Terry, feel free to jump in here. But so then we would like to take that back to the commission and kind of talk through where we're at there before we go to mayor and council / the Public Housing Board of Commissioners. And so that will be coming back in the next couple of months as well.
Thanks, Anne. Thoughts or comments about that? If not, Anne, you are next up on the agenda as well, I believe, with the HCD update.
And I'll be super quick because I know you give you some time back. Just wanted to let you know, oh, there's Ember. Wanted to let you know Mayor and Council approved the Home and American Rescue Plan recommendations as recommended, and as you all helped us in terms of that. So they approved that at the last meeting. And then just one other update. By happenstance, I'll probably miss the next 2 meetings, but I'm still here, not abandoning you. I'll make sure deputies are here, but just happenstance. April is I've had a vacation on my calendar since 2017, since it's the full total solar eclipse. So that one I will be leaving for a vacation, but not abandoning you. I'll be back.
Thanks, Anne. With that, next up, Megan Headings is going to talk about the Federal Home Loan Bank Mortgage Finance Symposium. Megan, take it away.
Hi, thank you. And I think Netta just asked me about screen share. I'm not going to share my screen. So I'm going to keep this fairly brief. I'm Megan Headings. I'm the Executive Director for Family Housing Resources. And for those of you that are not familiar, our agency works on sort of 2 different pillars of work. One is owning and managing affordable apartment communities, and the other side, and trying to do more development of new units. And the other side of the work is more on addressing sort of that financial stability and long-term path towards building wealth, which primarily for us looks at building home ownership in the community. So Marianne Bierling actually asked me to speak to you all today because this was something her and I were both hoping to attend, and she was unfortunately unable to make it. So I was happy to just give a brief sort of overview of what the symposium was and sort of some lessons learned for the most part. So this was hosted by Federal Home Loan Bank of San Francisco, who operates in California, Arizona, and Nevada. They are also a big supporter of down payment assistance for those of you that aren't familiar with their work. And then in partnership with the Urban Institute's Housing Policy Center. And so the symposium was really intended to look at sort of research and then develop and incubate some innovations in housing finance. And with the intent to tackle persistent challenges to closing the racial wealth gap. So it was interesting. It was definitely, and I think has links to a lot of the work that is happening. Although I will say, just as a narrative, I felt like a lot of it is directed at more of the lending institutions. And so that becomes a little more challenging, or the banking institutions. However, it doesn't mean that all of us shouldn't be aware, and also putting pressure where we probably could, that others institute some of the ideas and innovation that was coming from this. So they focus first on reserve products and, those items that potentially could be put out into the marketplace. One of them was really, I'm going to highlight a few items for you. One was borrower's mutual escrow fund. And this is really a theoretical concept and has not yet been piloted. So I will say it sounded intriguing, but I don't know how likely it is to move forward. I'm also going to put into the chat, it's a link to the agenda, so you can see some of the items on there, but also they did have a lot of materials. So if you do want to look into any of this information more, I would encourage you to do so. That one, you know, I think a lot of the concepts of the symposium were looking at the fact of where is that lack of access, and a big part of it comes down to finance, you know, access to capital, and some of that is based on lack of credit scores or ability to be financed. And then the second is access to cash or down payment assistance and the stability to stay in a home once you have receive a mortgage. So a lot of the different items that were being discussed related to sort of those core concepts. And this borrows mutual escrow fund, which I will say still did sound intriguing in my opinion. It would also look at providing, it was concept to scale up. So, you know, because it's an escrow, then you're pooling funds rather than having individual accounts, which was an interesting concept. And then also having potential access where homeowners could tap into it in a moment of crisis, which is often a, you know, concern for where people struggle. No, I will be honest that I walked away being like, I don't know if that's going to go anywhere, but that was my own narrative. So hopefully it does. The second piece was looking a little bit more at artificial intelligence. And I will say this was one that the symposium went sort of at rapid fire. So unfortunately didn't get a push on certain concepts or individuals. They did have two different entities there speaking on artificial intelligence. And primarily this is looking at how those determinations are made in mortgage lending and currently the denial rates. So even I was surprised by the 3 states. Arizona actually has the highest denial rates for Black homeowners and for lending, which was a bit disturbing to hear because that still continues to be Black potential borrowers continue to be the highest group that are denied credit, so denied lending. So still a lot that needs to happen. And I will say that a few of them made some really good arguments around, you know, using artificial intelligence to be better and put in better parameters for that lending process. To me, it's still very much unregulated. And so unfortunately, there's a lot there that still probably needs to be done, but it was intriguing at least. And hopefully there is a little bit more work happening on that space. The biggest one that I thought was interesting for this group to know a little bit more about was the special purpose credit programs and actually producing. So for those of you that aren't aware, that is an approved, you know, you're not violating directed lending programs because there's this caveat of special purpose credit programs. So it's working with disparate impact individuals and recognizing that, you know, there is a way to actually come in and create a product designated for, say, Black potential home buyers, and that's not violating those other rules. That was a really interesting one because they're working on a toolkit. And so I would encourage you to look into that one a bit more because I do think that there's possibility. One of the reasons, so these have been around for us for a long time, that access and ability to do it. However, it's really underutilized. And a big part of that is the fear factor on lenders because no one's really put it to the test and gotten through that. And so interesting to see if there's more toolkits, things that have been sort of approved in concept that maybe they can be implemented more and that can be spread a bit. So I did think that that one was interesting. And finally, I'll just close with the down payment assistance programs, obviously being a big need. And one of the things that we should stay sort of informed on is actually looking at middle income down payment assistance programs a bit more. So Federal Home Loan Bank of San Francisco actually did pilot this a little bit ago, and it was incredibly well received. I think it speaks, unfortunately, to the home prices rising above where income levels are at. And, you know, they created a program that is now also serving 80 to 140% of AMI for down payment assistance, which is really becoming a more critical need. I would still argue that I hope it doesn't pull from those programs that we're serving below 80% because that has not lessened. It's just unfortunate we are seeing even higher income individuals really not able to purchase either. So there's a lot more I could go into, but I know that you guys are short on time, so I don't want to take up any more.
Thanks, Megan. Any thoughts or questions for Megan? Okay, with that, we will move on to the next agenda item, subcommittee updates. Tisha, you're first.
Yes, so we discussed thoughts or reflections on the retreat. Then we went into discussion on goals. During this meeting, I did put that information into the Google document. And we are going to continue to have that discussion. And the next subcommittee meeting, we will be finalizing those goals.
Thank you. I think next up is me. Let me look at the agenda. Yeah. First and foremost, we have, I think, as y'all know from the retreat, we did rename the subcommittee the Equitable Housing Strategies Subcommittee, as opposed to what it used to be, which was Housing Desegregation. But we debriefed about the retreat, and we talked about what came out of there, highlighted a couple of things. We did mention and highlight the Prosperity Initiative and its importance. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the importance of continuing to try and figure out indicators so that we can measure equity as we move forward and as we dig into equitable housing strategies that we think are worth bringing forward to the full commission and potentially maybe could get some traction in the city of Tucson. Again, we talked about the mission and vision. What else did we talk about? Again, a lot of talk about sharing resources and really, how we're going to figure out what's working, looking at other cities that have equitable housing policies that we think are effective, and really trying to be a clearinghouse for those kinds of policies and bringing forward the ones that, again, we think are the most important and could get the most traction here. So did I miss anything, y'all that were there at the subcommittee meeting? Okay. And then last but not least is affordable housing, and that's Jim, but he's not here. And I don't think they met either, right? So those are the subcommittee updates. And with that, I think we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is next steps. And as you can see on the agenda, the next commission meeting, as well as the next subcommittee meetings are all on there. And just the thing that I think really sticks out for me today in terms of next steps, one of the things that we need to do is set aside some time at the next commission meeting to discuss the mission. Obviously, we talked a lot about it today, and there's been some movement, but so definitely take some time between now and the next meeting to review the retreat meeting notes and if you have any additions there. And then obviously Jim's subcommittee is going to meet, and I believe we'll talk about it then. And then I think at the next meeting, hopefully we can regroup and nail that down. And then the other thing that we need to do, and I was hoping we might have some time to do it today, but we're pretty much out of time. We did obviously vote to have full-time facilitators for our meetings going forward, and we need to decide. I think the main decision that we need to make is, are we happy with Tani and Colleen, or do we want to explore looking for other facilitators? Obviously, if we didn't want to go with Colleen and Tani, we would need to look to see who is in the city's procurement process, I believe. But I think that that should be something that we have on the next meeting agenda for discussion. I see a couple of hands. Go ahead, Mark.
Staff, I think I heard Ann say she'd find the money. I just wanted to be sure she did, or
Yeah, good. I appreciate that question, Mark. And what we talked about when we had our meeting is I'm comfortable saying 6 months. I want to just be mindful of budget, and many people have likely heard the city budget's probably going to be pretty rough the next couple years. So I'm committing to 6 months for now. And so yes, that we're okay with that, but just want to be cautious committing too far.
I believe I saw another hand, but now I don't see it. Mindy, did you have your hand up?
Yes, that was me, busted. With the facilitators, I think that Khalid and Tani worked with us, had been with us, so I wouldn't understand why you would look for anybody else.
Yeah, that makes sense to me as well, and we can put it on our agenda for next meeting to dig in a little bit more. But I tend to agree with you, Mindy. Are there any other next steps that we need to discuss before we adjourn? Going once, going twice. All right. If there are no objections, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Jay. Good night.
Thanks, Jay.
Bye, all.
All right, thanks, Jay.
And bye, all.
Bye.
Good night, everyone. What?